Hi there, I'm Taliana Stoy with Roundtable Radio, and today I am blessing your ears with the fourth episode of my podcast, What Happens When You Give a Theater Kid a Mic, where I discuss and share my opinion on all things musicals and musical theater, whether it's on Broadway, off Broadway, or, in this case, Broadway baddies and belters. That's right, today we are hitting on none other than the classic and iconic Heathers the Musical, and today I am joined with a very special guest star.
Hi, I'm Bella Marquez, and I'm here. Woohoo!
Bella is a friend of mine. We do theater here at Episcopal together, and she's going to be joining me to discuss Heathers. So today we're going to be hitting on a couple songs in the soundtrack, some of the characters, and some of the actors. So I'm going to let Bella introduce the first song that we're going to be talking about today.
So the first song we're going to talk about, obviously you can't talk about Heathers without talking about Candy Store.
The iconic.
The iconicness.
Just everything about it.
Where you're really introduced, you're not introduced to the Heathers, but this is where you really get to know them.
Mm-hmm. Their personality just kind of shines through in this particular number.
Their great harmonies.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
And just the wonderful fashion choices.
The fashion choices alone in this musical are fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. The number in its whole is really just so, like, you have three of some of the most iconic characters on Broadway and even in film, because if you didn't know, Heathers is also a movie, which I highly suggest watching if you haven't. Also listen to the soundtrack for Heathers if you haven't. Do that now. And listen to Candy Store. So Candy Store is great. The harmonies, just the soundtrack, it's wonderful. You just can't really talk about Heathers without talking about Candy Store because it's just so iconic. So now that we both ranted about that a little bit and how much we both love it, we're going to segue into a song that is just as amazing, but much more complicated. If you want to introduce that song.
Oh, Meant to Be Yours. It's towards the end of the show, and this is really where one of the characters, JD, originally played by Ryan McCartan, basically snaps. His mind breaks.
Just a whole mental breakdown.
A whole mental breakdown, and he's come to Veronica's house to kill her, most likely.
Yeah.
And he finds that she has committed suicide. But, spoiler alert, not really.
Yeah, if you are confused if you're confused about that spoiler alert, you should go listen to the soundtrack yourself, because it's a truly inspiring moment.
So he tells what he thinks is Veronica's corpse, his plan to basically blow up school.
The entire school, yes.
Yeah.
Highly problematic.
Highly problematic.
I feel like Meant to Be Yours is just the epitome of teen angst in a song.
So much more.
So much more with it, absolutely. You have like your just typical teen angst that I feel like is present in most musicals featuring teens. But this one's like teen angst if teen angst was on steroids. Yeah. Just psychotic break kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it always, the character switches between this soft, sweet melody and this intense, like, rock
kind of punk almost, I would say.
Yeah, and he switches while he's talking to the supposed corpse.
And
it's
Veronica.
Just very frightening.
Yes.
And then there's this one point where he breaks, and it's so scary. The first time I heard it, I got chills.
Absolutely, yes. And just to think if, singing to your girlfriend's corpse isn't weird enough, he then goes on to sing about blowing up the entire school, which is just even more complicated, problematic, and all around toxic.
This character has a lot of issues throughout the show.
Speaking of toxic, why don't we just have a whole conversation about JD as a whole?
Yeah.
Because that man.
We're first introduced to him, and he's beating up two jocks who, like, made one comment to him.
Absolutely.
He is entirely different from all the other characters around him. And throughout the show and his love affair with Veronica, we find out that he has a lot of issues at home, and his mother has tragically passed away, and his father is very distant, and it's really shaped him as a person. And yeah,
just JD is, I mean, kind of like what we were saying about Meant to Be Yours. JD is really, if you take the angstiest, most just depressed teen character out there and then just maximize that to a whole new level. Because JD isn't just, angsty and screwed up. He is a bomb. He is so destructive. And the problems that basically the entire musical
it's all him. He's the one to make the first murder. He's the one to lie to Veronica so that they commit the second murder together. And he wants to continue, which is really tragic.
So messed up in so many levels.
And he ends the show. His character dies in the
end. From a
from the bomb.
Dies in the process of a bomb which he planted in his school exploding.
And he chooses to take it amongst himself, if that makes sense, and commit suicide, which is really
absolutely
sad.
Tragic. But I mean, and I feel like something about JD is that he's a really complex character because he's not one of those characters where you can just say like, oh, he's the bad guy, like, move on. Like he has some deep-rooted trauma in that poor child's mind.
Yeah, and it's very tragic, but it makes for a very interesting
show, which is
he's very complex
character.
Just takes the show to a whole new, darker place. The show in itself is obviously dark, but he just takes it to another level.
A whole new level, which I feel is just something about Heathers as a whole. Is obviously, like, it's a great show because they just take so many things to, like, another level that you just didn't see coming, that a lot of shows don't do. So we're almost out of time here, but we have time to hit on maybe one more thing. I think that you can't really talk about Heathers without talking about the infamous Barrett Wilbert Weed, who plays
what a legend.
Who plays Veronica in Heathers. Just what a legend, honestly.
Her belt is just amazing.
It's truly astonishing.
Her voice just
as a whole.
And she takes her characters to like
a new level.
Absolutely. A new place.
Yeah, as we mentioned at the beginning, I said we were going to be talking about Broadway baddies, none other than the Heathers and Broadway belters, who's coming in now with Barrett Wilbert Weed. So her voice is just incredible. Yeah,
it's so powerful.
If you just listen to like any of the songs that she's in, you just get chills even from just like listening to her belt, which is. I know, she's absolutely infamous among theater kids. So we're almost out of time here, but thank you all for tuning in. Quick reminder, I'm Taliana with my podcast, What Happens When You Give a Theater Kid a Mic, with Roundtable Radio, and I was so glad to have you join me this week, Bella. It was so enjoyable.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was very fun.
Yeah, we talk about just Broadway and theater.
I'm an avid listener to this podcast. So.
Yes, she listens to all of them. So we love talking about theater together. So this is fun to talk about it on this podcast. So I'll hope you tune in next week, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.